Hello, everybody, and welcome to the April 27th, 2022 Oak Grove Community Council General Business Meeting. My name is Joseph Edge. I'm your chair, and I will be leading the meeting tonight. Tonight we have a guest from Sustainable Clackamas County, and I will also then be giving an update on Housing Strategies Phase 2, which had a public hearing this morning. And then we'll have our committee updates on social time at the end, first time. So first off, I'd like to give our board members a chance to introduce themselves. First off, I'll take this off of sharing really quick. And hi, I'm Joseph Edge, and I live in the River Forest neighborhood, and I am the chair. Valerie?
Hi, I'm Valerie Chapman. I'm the vice chair, and I live a block and a half from the trolley trail on Evergreen Street.
Danielle?
Hi, Danielle Lohman. I am the secretary, and I live on Evergreen and 21st.
Jane?
Jane Civiletti, treasurer. I live on Fair Oaks Ave and Oak Grove Boulevard.
Rich?
Hi, Rich Nippon. I live on McCartney Lane, which is off of Kronberg, south of the Fred Meyers.
And Mark?
Hi, I'm Mark Elliott. I live on Riesling Road off of Concord Road.
Hey, thanks. Thank you, board members. And what I'd like to do now is we will do attendance. And so I will go down the list of Zoom attendees and call out your display name. And we'll ask you to say your first and last name and the name of the street you live on so that we can track attendance. And then when you're done speaking, please mute your microphone. And keep your microphones muted unless you have the floor throughout the meeting, please. So I will start with Craig Van Valkenburg.
Hi, good evening. Nice to see everybody. I'm Craig Van Valkenburg. I am at Willamette View.
Thanks, Craig. Paul?
Paul Savas, Kronberg Avenue.
Susan?
Susan Keel, and I live on Oak Shore Lane, and I can't get the camera to work, so it's just voice there.
Okay, well, thanks again for joining us. Jean?
Jean Coverley, I live at Roseville.
Thank you. Karen?
Karen Oberding, and I'm on Mulberry.
Marilyn?
Marilyn Gottschall at Rosevilla.
Thelma?
Thelma Hagen Miller. I live on Southeast Westview and Southeast Southview at the corner.
Thank you. Tom Hammond?
Jolene and Tom Hammond. We live on Viewcrest, a short street between Wallace and Norma.
Thank you. Let's have to scroll down here just a second. Anita?
Hi, I'm Anita Blackmar. I live on Fair Oaks Avenue.
Dave?
Dave Toback, Rosevilla.
Heidi Bullock?
Yes, hi. I'm actually in Jennings Lodge area off of a Hillside Drive.
But she's our new board member on the Oak Lodge Water Services Board.
Yes, I'm the newest director on the board of the Oak Lodge Water Services division. So thank you.
Thank you. Nice to have you here. Jenna?
Jenna Smith on Fair Oaks Drive and Bluff Road.
Thank you. Let's see, we already got Marilyn. Pam?
I'm Pam Brand. I am at Rosevilla.
Thank you. Sarah Quay?
I'm Sarah Quay. I'm off of Southeast River Road.
Thank you. And Sue Conahan?
Sue Conahan, I'm at the corner of Parkview Circle and River Road.
Thank you. Suzanne Wolf?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Suzanne Wolf, and I live on Southeast East Avenue.
Thomas?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Tom Hogan, and we're at Oatfield between Concord and Thistle.
Thank you. I think we already got Tom Hammond. Let's see, Eleanor Hunter arrived.
Yeah, hey
Can
everybody,
you introduce
evening.
yourself?
Hello, hello. How lovely to see so many smiling, happy, lovely faces and neighbors. Hi. Oh, I live on Laurie Avenue, just south of Oak Grove Boulevard.
Thank you. And then let's see, I think we're through attendance. If we didn't get you, please chat with Danielle and let her know that you're here, you know, first and last name, the name of the street you live on, so we can track attendance and make sure that we get you counted. So up next, I'd like to turn it over to Susan Keel of the Oak Lodge Water Services District for a quick update.
Well, thanks, Joseph, and thanks for accommodating me at the front end here. I wanted to come back. You guys asked me to come back and tell you how we were doing on the authority process. And I'm happy to report we're moving right along, and the first hearing went well with the Board of County Commissioners. I think that was on the 14th. And we probably had, oh, I don't know, 15 or 20 people in the audience that were there to support the formation of the authority. And Thelma made a little presentation and asked people to raise their hands in support. So it was a very solid showing. Plus, I particularly want to thank the Oak Grove Community Council for the excellent letter that they sent to the County Commission in support of this. And I also appreciate the one that Rich Nepom sent in. Good letter too. In any case, that next hearing is at 10 a.m. on the 5th. And if we are able to move through that without 100 people determining that they'd like to either vote on this or are opposed to it, then the county commission will proceed to say that we can be an authority and move forward in the process. So if you have other comments, I think that it's still possible to submit them to the county commission, or you can show up at the second hearing, and there's a registration process with little cards if you want to go ahead and talk at that. But I appreciate the support from this group and the number of people that showed up there to testify in support of it. I would also tell you that we're in the throes of a tough budget process over at the Oak Lodge Water Services, because we've had a couple of very large capital projects dropped on us from DEQ. I think I mentioned this a little bit last time, but a pump station that's close to me on Oak Shore Lane, a major pump station in the system, has got to be replaced because it's been inconsistent, or replace is a poor word. It has to be fixed to the point where there are no sanitary sewer overflows caused by its lack of performance. And the force main that's attached to it appears to be undersized at this point as well. So we've got some quick work to do on that matter, as well as having just been issued a much tighter permit by DEQ for our discharge to on the treated water through the plant. And that is going to require us to add a third level of treatment, tertiary treatment, in order to consistently meet the standards in the permit. That is not quite as snap your fingers, get it done as the pump station problem, but it's a big number. We're expecting something around 6 million, and the pump station force main something around 2 million. So those are pretty big hits, and we're struggling mightily with the budget and the rates that would be associated with that. So just a little heads up, and hopefully I can come back again and talk with you in more depth about those particular projects. I think you'd find it interesting. Of course, I'm a little biased because I think sewer and water projects are interesting, but I think you would find it interesting, and we've got some good presentation material. So I think it would be a good item for your agenda as well. So if people have some questions, I'm happy to try to tackle those. Otherwise, I'll just be back for another report.
Any questions while we have Susan? Yeah, I'm not seeing any. So thanks a lot, Susan, for taking the time to give us the update tonight in spite of your schedule conflicts. Really appreciate you, bringing this information to us, and we will look to offer you a spot on our agenda in the coming months when it makes sense for you to give a presentation about. Oh, I see Craig is raising his hand. Did you have a question for Susan?
Yeah, just real quick, Susan, with those two major projects, are you able to speak to a timeline? Is this, 3 years, 12 months, 5 years? What are you thinking at this point?
Actually, I think on the pump station force main, 2 years is about when we would be done. I mean, we're working on that right now, and it'll extend over 2 years. In the case of the tertiary treatment, there are 3 methodologies that could be used, and we really aren't even at the point where we have determined which of those is the most cost-effective and beneficial one for us to be using. So there's that kind of analysis before you go into design and construction. And we need to be talking with DEQ about what the schedule might be, given all the things we don't know at this point. I would say your 5-year or thereabouts is probably not an unrealistic estimate on that. But I may know more in a couple months on it too.
Well, keep on keeping on,
let's
Susan.
let's definitely reconnect, Susan, and make sure that we get you on the schedule when you think it's best in terms of having enough certainty to provide an update, I think.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate the invitation.
Absolutely.
Thanks for all your work and efforts. Thank you and the rest of the board. It's a lot. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Susan. Really appreciate you being able to provide the update with your schedule conflict. So
thanks.
Have a great night.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Bye.
Bye. Now I'd like to turn it over to Danielle, who has our secretary's update and attendance check or minutes from last month.
Okay. Yep. And then just for the attendance, I did catch Guian and Baldwin, who joined while Susan was talking. So you're all set. And then I did want to announce that Jenna Smith has attended this was her 6th meeting. So she's now able to vote. Yeah, congrats on that. And then the minutes were sent out, I think it was early morning Sunday or late Saturday evening, and I was hoping that we could get those passed. Were there any corrections to be made? Okay. Okay, so we'll submit those with no changes. I'll turn it
Do
over
you
to
need to have,
Jane.
do you need to have a motion to accept them or?
I don't think so, Joseph. We usually just
I don't think so. Cool.
say,
Okay.
Joseph, you tell me.
No, we haven't been,
Okay.
yeah, we haven't, we've been basically adopting them by unanimous consent. And so unless there are objections to the minutes as presented or as corrected, then, you know, we're fine without a motion.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Danielle. I'd like to turn it over to Jane for the treasurer's update.
Thank you, Joseph. Since our last meeting, we have had $200 more in donations to the Community Council. That brings our total now to $1,596.18. At this point, no outstanding bills.
Thank you, Jane. And now we have a quick update from Rich on a couple changes to the website that he'd like to announce.
Oops, sorry, didn't unmute. If you go to our website, I couldn't find any place where you could link to it and get a subscribe to our newsletter, which is sort of self-defeating because we need people to get the newsletter to know that we have a meeting. And so there's now a link on the front page on the very top, well, not the very top, but towards the top, that lets you subscribe to our newsletter, which lets you get the notices that there's going to be a meeting, and in case there's a special meeting or anything like that, you'll get a notice of it. The other thing is I added a link on the right-hand side of the menu bar. The sheriff's office has created a website where you can view the sheriff's office activities by categories and by where you are. It takes a little bit of work at this point to click through to get to Oak Grove and to try to figure out what's going on where you are. But it is, they're trying to be more transparent about what's going on. And being that we're the Oak Grove Community Council, it seems like we should be promoting that so that our citizens can see what's going on in our area. That's the updates. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. And now I'd like to invite Selma to give a remembrance of Dick Jones.
Okay, I've written it out so I don't just ramble. Dick was born in May of 1938, so he was 6 years younger than me. He graduated from Milwaukee High School in 1956 and passed away on March 23rd, 2022, after many years of battling Parkinson's. I first met Dick about 20 years ago when he was mowing his lawn and I was delivering printed flyers to houses in his Vineyard Road neighborhood for an Oak Lodge Community Council meeting. He shut off the mower and questioned me about the issue explained on the flyer. He then explained that he had recently retired from his position at Teledyne Wachang in Albany, Oregon, and moved back to his home in Oak Grove. He was now interested in getting involved in local community issues, and get involved he did, as you will soon hear. He started, as I did, by becoming a voting member of the Oak Lodge Community Council. When Bob Walt, then the Oak Lodge Community Council chair, wanted to step down from the chair position, Dick stepped up and served in that position for quite a few years. One day he called me to talk about an idea he had for the former overgrown rail right-of-way that ran alongside his property. It was the original right-of-way of the former trolley to Oregon City. His idea centered around the green spaces bond measure that Metro had passed in prior years. Dick had found out that the bond measure was nearing termination, but there was still funding money in the account. He thought we should go after Metro to spend the leftover bond money to purchase the right-of-way and use it as a rail to trails pathway. We called a meeting of some area residents and laid out a plan to make this happen. We decided on a name for our plan and our group, the Friends of the Trolley Trail. Part one of the plan was to gather letters of support from area organizations, businesses, churches, schools, etc. Between us, we succeeded in getting 67 support letters. Part two was to start attending the Metro Council meetings and during their public comment period, talk about our idea and present the support letters. On December 27th, the general manager of North Clackamas Parks and Rec District called with our Christmas present. The head of Metro's property department had just finished the purchase of the Union Pacific right-of-way. But our work had just begun. North Clackamas Parks and Rec District had no money to design a master plan for this right-of-way. We found out Metro still had a bit of money left after the purchase, so Dick and I continued going to Metro, only this time it was to work with their Parks Department people on the trail master plan. During these planning meetings, I was usually the bad guy. I'm always the bad guy. And Dick was the good guy. I gave input on what was being talked about, but one day Dick and I were driving to the Metro Parks meeting and Dick said, "Today I'm going to be the bad guy." I'll never forget that comment because it was so uncharacteristic of Dick to ever want to be the bad guy. Dick was always good with numbers and much sought after by organizations such as the Oak Lodge Water District, the Metro Policy Advisory Committee, the Clackamas River Basin Council, the Clackamas County Coordinating Council, the North Clackamas School District Budget Committee, and in his later years, the Clackamas County Aging Services Advisory Council. He received a plaque from the Oak Grove Community Council that said, "Grateful appreciation of your many years of outstanding service and devotion to the Oak Grove community." Dick struggled with Parkinson's during many of his later years. His doctor told him he should continue to help with the trolley trail and walk it every day. And that was okay because he lived right next door to it. The Friends group does have a video of him talking about the trolley trail before Parkinson's took over his life. After Dick's passing, I received an email from one of the area friends saying the community has lost a giant. I agree. Thank you, I'm done. And I can send this to Danielle. You don't have to do it. I'll just send you and you can pick out of it what you want to.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thelma. I really appreciate that. So we'll move into the main part of our agenda now. And so up first is Evan Polk. He is the Sustainability Supervisor for Sustainability Clackamas County. So Evan, welcome. I think we saw you about 3 years ago in person. And so this is the first time we'll actually have seen Evan on Zoom.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? And can you see the screen share I've got going?
Yes,
I see a couple of nods. Okay, super. Well, thanks. I remember I have fond memories of being in some meetings, not as many as I'm sure many of you, but in some meetings with Dick Jones, and I'm sad to hear of his passing. And I want to thank you, Thelma, for sharing that reflection. I appreciated it a lot. So I want to say thank you to you all for inviting me here today. My name's Evan Polk, and I'm the county's Sustainability and Solid Waste Manager. Issues like the livability of our planet and our community and how we use our resources are, I know, near and dear to our hearts. And on behalf not only of ourselves, but also of our children and their children. And I live in urban unincorporated county in Jennings Lodge, to be precise. So our community's future is something I care about, not only because it's my job, but also because it's my home too. So I'm very happy to join you this evening. Today, I'd like to give you a little bit of an overview, just of a few of the many aspects of our work, and then talk a little bit about recycling, since it is always a topic about which we receive a lot of questions, and then provide an overview of the climate action plan effort that is underway at the county that we're working to develop for the community. And if time provides, take questions. Okay, so I just described what's on the slide here before you, and so I'll skip right by it. Here are a few of the things that the Sustainability and Solid Waste Program does. We sit within the Department of Transportation and Development at the county, and we oversee a lot of recycling and waste reduction efforts. We also administer the garbage and recycling system, the collection system within unincorporated Clackamas County. We have a role in planning and preparedness for disaster debris, and that is something that we have been pretty busy with over the last couple of years with two FEMA declared disasters, the ice storm and the wildfires. We have a role in helping to promote more sustainable operations at the county as an organization. We provide a lot of public education, technical assistance, and support to different kinds of partnerships in the realm of sustainability. And more recently have been helping to coordinate a process to develop a climate action plan for our community. So I'll touch just a little bit on some of the things that I mentioned. Garbage and recycling administration essentially boils down to making sure that our community members receive a good value service that's predictable and meets their needs for a reasonable fee. And one of the things that we do each year is take a close look at the costs of providing garbage and recycling collection. And as those costs change over time, when necessary, we recommend and adopt fee increases or changes to reflect those costs. And this is just a little snapshot of what costs go into the garbage and recycling service that you most likely pay for. We do a lot around community outreach and education. These are just a few of the things we do. This includes services for multifamily communities, which includes retirement communities such as Rose Villa and Willamette View. Education around residential recycling, outreach in the community. We provide free recycling containers at community events. We also help to sponsor something that we call repair fairs, which are gatherings of community members and volunteers with things that they would like to have fixed. The goal is to build a culture of fixing things and repairing things before throwing them away, because that is a skill that we have lost a little bit in our culture over the years. We support libraries of things at several libraries around the county, hopefully someday the future Oak Grove Library. And we help folks understand how to make things like green cleaners or to prevent food waste. We have a very active program in schools throughout Clackamas County. Clackamas County has more schools certified as Oregon Green Schools than any other county in Oregon. And that's something we're very proud of. One neat project that we've helped several schools with over the years is the installation of milk dispensers to eliminate the millions of single-use milk cartons that are thrown away over the course of your average year in our community. We also provide technical assistance for businesses that can include free consultations on how they can adopt more sustainable practices, reduce their waste, recycle better. We provide recognition of businesses that do a particularly good job of adopting sustainable practices. Rose Villa just happens to be one of those that is in the Oak Grove area, and a lot of free resources for businesses. One of the major themes for us right now is continuing to find ways to reduce food waste and then make sure that what food we do throw away is increasingly not going to the landfill, where it does no good and in fact generates methane emissions, which are a concern for climate change, but instead try to put food waste to work by collecting it separately for either composting or energy generation. And a few years ago, our Board of Commissioners adopted a requirement that businesses that generate large quantities of food waste would eventually need to start separating that for composting. And that was delayed for a couple of years due to the pandemic, but it is just kind of finally getting underway again. One of the reasons why our Board of Commissioners and most cities, I think maybe all cities in the metro urban area, adopted these new requirements is that we generate 5,000 semi-trucks worth of food going to the landfill every year. And the amount that we were recovering at the time from businesses was still pretty small as of a couple of years ago. And so we wanted to help make up that gap by supporting businesses in adopting more of these programs. So those are just a few of the many things we do in sort of the recycling and solid waste world. And I want to touch a little bit on recycling now. A few years ago, you may recall that China made some changes in the way that recyclables were often getting shipped abroad from not only America, but Europe. And the reason why they made those changes is because we were putting too much garbage in our recycling. And we in Oregon can be fairly proud that we do a pretty good job sorting compared to many other communities. And when we do a good job sorting our recycling, we can be confident that it is actually getting recycled and it's reaching a market where it's being reused. So for those of you that might not have been sure if our recycling was going to the right place, you can have confidence that it does if you sort it well. Our Board of Commissioners is also going to be considering options for additional recycling services on a subscription basis in months to come. And, you know, one of the things I want to point out kind of as a transition to talking about climate change is that we get a very large number of questions about recycling, and we very much appreciate those questions and want to encourage good recycling in our community. But it's important to recognize that recycling is just one small part of the larger environmental challenges that we face in addressing climate change and unsustainable consumption. And here's an illustration of that. The line on the bottom shows you the greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to climate change that we would generate from the materials that we discard if all of the materials that we discarded just went to the landfill. Now, imagine that we recycle everything we possibly could. That's the green bar on top. And what you can see is that recycling, even if you did the maximum theoretical most you could ever possibly do, which we don't right now, we still have a lot of greenhouse gas impacts tied up in the materials that we buy and use and consume. And usually recycling is a helpful thing to do at the end of that life cycle. But we do need to be thinking more about the impacts of our consumption upstream. So let me pause there and ask, Joe, did you want to have a time for questions now, or should I continue on through and then have time for questions towards the end?
I think we can hold questions to the end. I think that'd be fine. And you know, if anybody wants to, feel free to put questions in the chat, and we can make sure that we get to those, you know, at the end of Evan's segment.
Okay, thanks. So I'd like to transition a little bit to talk about the effort to develop a climate action plan for Clackamas County. This is something that our board has asked to be done. And they've done that through the system that the county uses for tracking performance, setting high-level goals, and also connecting that to our budget. It's called Performance Clackamas. And one of the goals within that is that the county have a climate action plan adopted by 2023 that that includes specific recommendations on reaching the goal of being carbon neutral by 2050. So talk a little bit more about that goal, why we're doing it, some of the process and the timeline for the project, what our contribution is to climate change, some of the categories that we're looking at, and then I can wrap up. So again, the goal that our board has set is to, by 2023, adopt a climate action plan for our community with specific recommendations to reach the goal of being carbon neutral by 2050. Now, what we mean by carbon neutral is that the county is no longer contributing to the buildup of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. And the scientific consensus suggests that that is something we need to get to no later than 2050. And eventually we'll probably need to get beyond that, drawing down the atmospheric concentration of greenhouse gases in order to avoid the worst impacts of climate change. Why are we doing this? Well, in addition to the simple fact that it's something that our board has asked us to work on, we are focused on stopping our contribution to climate change because of the negative impacts that it has on our community, on Oregon, and on the world that we depend on. From a health standpoint, the environmental changes associated with climate change are amplifying natural hazards and increasing a whole host of impacts to human well-being. The last time that in geologic history that carbon dioxide levels, which that's the main greenhouse gas, last time those levels were at today's levels, humans as we think of them today were not around. Sea level was 100 feet higher. There were trees at the South Pole, and the global average temperature was 11 degrees higher Fahrenheit. And that's just at today's levels, right? And we're headed above today's levels still. So it's not only an issue of human health, it's an issue of our ecosystems, our economy, even our national security, you could argue. And what is that looking like locally? I mean, you know, I can't see you all, but if we were all together and I said, show of hands, like who felt impacted in some way over the last years by some aspect of climate change, I imagine many of you would raise your hands. Maybe you were dealing with the choking smoke from our unprecedented wildfires. Maybe you were impacted by the severe ice storm. Maybe you lost some trees, or maybe you know someone who died during our severe heat dome last year. We lost lives because of that heat event last June. And this is a little more mundane, but we grow, like things grow here in Oregon that didn't used to grow here. So there's a lot of signs of how climate is changing locally, including variability of snowpack and precipitation and so on. So as part of our effort to develop a climate action plan, we formed a community advisory task force with the blessing of the board and have worked with them over several months to identify some major categories of work, major categories of action for climate change. And we are now emerging into a feedback phase where we will be seeking public review and comment of the work that the Community Advisory Task Force has accomplished in tandem to some extent with a youth advisory task force that we also convened in order to engage specifically with high school and college age youth who you may, if you know any, you may know that there are, I think, reasonable concerns about what the world that they're growing up in is going to look like. And we will then refine the plan with help from our Community Advisory Task Force and with the input from the community, and then present something for our board to consider either later this year or early next. So how are we contributing to climate change in Clackamas County? Well, we used 2018 data to evaluate and answer this question with the help of consultants. And these are just big numbers. What do they really mean? It may be hard to say, but 2018 emissions were 7.1 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent in Clackamas County. And a big chunk of that is actually greenhouse gas emissions tied to the goods and services that we use that were actually made somewhere else. And if you exclude those from the analysis, our greenhouse gas footprint as a community is about 3.8 million metric tons. You can see that here on this pink slice of the donut, that what is called imported consumption, so to speak, is the emissions tied to, oh, I don't know, maybe that pair of shoes that I bought that was manufactured in Thailand, right? About a quarter of our emissions are tied to the energy that our buildings use. That could be natural gas for heating. It could be the emissions tied to electricity that we use, because there is some coal and natural gas use in generating our electricity. Transportation is responsible for about 20% of our greenhouse gas footprint. And unfortunately, that share is increasing. And then we have a few other categories of activities that also contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. One of the things that we sometimes hear is, how do we compare in Clackamas County to other communities around the world? And I want to say, first of all, that the most meaningful benchmark is just ourselves over time, because in order to get to carbon neutral, we basically need to get our contribution to climate change down to zero. But on a per capita basis in Clackamas County in 2018, each person was responsible for about 9.1 metric tons of CO2 emissions. And that is a little bit more than half of the United States average. So we do a little bit better in Oregon and in Clackamas County because we have more renewable energy and slightly fewer transportation miles per person. But it's still a lot higher than the global average. So our plan is going to break up the actions that we might consider taking as a community into 5 basic categories. And each one of these categories would necessarily need to include many different projects and programs in order to reach our goal. That's our buildings and the energy we use to power them. It's the way we move people and goods. It's the how much water we use and the wastewater we treat. It's the things we buy, use, and throw away. We also do need to make an effort to preserve and enhance the natural systems that we depend on, forests and soils, because they, when healthy, can help pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. I'll touch only very briefly on these, but buildings and energy, we're thinking about, again, our built environment, the energy we use to light, heat, and cool our buildings. That can be all types of buildings, right? Schools, offices, homes, industrial facilities. And we need to essentially reduce the amount of energy that we need to run our buildings and then shift that energy over to cleaner sources over time. We also need to be thinking about how we get around and how our destinations relate to each other in space in ways that can allow us to choose alternatives to driving everywhere for every trip, for every need. And so we can reduce emissions by aiming for fewer trips happening in cars, which happens to have a lot of health benefits and potentially financial benefits because it can be expensive to own a car. And that can include, making investments that allow people to choose to walk more often or bike or take transit. We're also going to still be somewhat dependent on cars for many years to come. And so we need to switch the type of cars we drive to low emissions or zero emissions vehicles, like electric vehicles. And we need also to be thoughtful about the stuff that we buy, use, and throw away. That's about, again, half of our emissions footprints. And through more thoughtful consumption, and through taking care of the things we buy and fixing them rather than just throwing them away and maybe not buying as many single-use disposable things, we can reduce our footprint tied to consumption and waste. So looking forward, there will be an opportunity for everyone to take a survey on the different major sections of climate action. And this link over here, starting next week, should have a link to a survey. We would invite you to learn more about the project when you have the opportunity, to ask friends, neighbors, and family members to partake in the survey. And you can also join the interested parties email list, receiving project updates by email. And you can do that by sending an email to climate@clackamas.us, and then we'll put you on our mailing list. Next steps on the project include additional modeling and research from our consulting team, and then the survey that I mentioned, incorporating public and community advisory task force input into a draft plan. Then we intend to go back out to the public to say, hey, is this feeling like the right direction? And then the board should hopefully be ready to review the plan, refine it, and if they are still willing, to endorse it or adopt it. So that's the plan. I know Commissioner Savas is with us here today, so if he's got some perspectives on this, I don't want to put you on the spot, sir, but I know you're here, so would welcome any input you have. And that is my presentation. So thank you very much. And I'll close with my contact information and phone number here and our website. So thank you. Any questions if we have time for it?
Yeah, we definitely do have time. And Commissioner Savas, did you want to add something before we start taking questions?
Yeah, Evan, if you just maybe talk about the task force that we have and the good work they're doing, please.
Sure. So we assembled through an application process, a task force of around 20 individuals representing a number of spheres of knowledge, and also representing rural and urban, business community members, nonprofits. So there's a real diversity to the task force. And they have been kind of a sounding board and also the creative contributors to identifying a number of different types of actions that our community could take. Now, that could be either individuals, it could be the county as an organization, it could be the county advocating for others to do things, because of course, there are a lot of players involved. So that's our task force, sort of in a nutshell. Again, lots of interests and bases of knowledge represented there, from forestry, farming, to our utilities, and both urban and rural communities.
Yeah, thank you, Evan.
You're welcome.
Let's see. So, are there any questions for Evan? First off, about the climate action plan. I do have a question or two queued up about recycling, which we'll go back to in a minute. But Marilyn, did you have a question about that?
Yes, I actually have two questions. We just did a survey among our population about attitudes towards climate change at Rose Villa. And I'm wondering, if residents from Rose Villa took the county survey, would we be able to get our data as a community back to see where we stand?
My guess is that the answer would be no to that question, because the survey will be designed to be anonymous. Okay. If there are folks at Rose Villa that are willing to share that information amongst themselves, it's possible that our technical assistance staff could help you do that in a way that you could preserve some of that information in-house, but it might be, through a parallel survey or something like that.
Okay, my second question is, will the goals of your climate, in terms of the Clackamas County sustainability certification, will having a climate action plan be a part of what you expect from businesses if they are to receive certification?
That's a very good question. So our business certification program, it's called Leaders in Sustainability. We also have a version in Spanish, and that certification has several actions that a business can take in the realm of climate change and renewable energy. And the way that the certification is built, a business would need to take at least some actions in that area. For example, if they opted to purchase renewable energy from PGE or their utility, they would get a credit for that as part of the certification.
But having a climate action plan would not necessarily be part of the requirements.
Oh, a business would not necessarily have to have its own plan. No, our certification is designed to be accessible by small businesses and large. And I think many small businesses might struggle to develop an entire plan unto themselves, but we can provide them with a list of actions that they can take that would make a big difference.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Eleanor?
Yes, Eben, I don't know if you can answer this or not. I've been a happy utilizer of Ridwell, and I know that Ridwell is not currently able to function in Clackamas County. And I'm just wondering if you could give us any updates on the possibility of when I could get my growing pile of #1 plastic containers sent back to Ridwell instead of growing in my basement. So.
Yes. Thank you, Eleanor. I can't give you a definitive answer, but I can tell you that we're bringing to our Board of Commissioners a couple of options for enhanced subscription-based sort of additional recycling options. And I can also share that those two options, there's different flavors of options, but the two main options essentially boil down to the county creating some sort of licensing system that would allow a company like the one you mentioned, but also our own collectors or others to provide those types of services with the appropriate sideboards, because it would be really important actually for our system to function sustainably in order for there to be some reasonable regulations. The other scenario is that our board directs our existing garbage and recycling collectors to provide a similar service. And communities around our region, there are examples of communities following both of those pathways.
It's just as you're stressing, as an individual, there's just so much I can do. And then it's like, what are the systems in which I live, and how can I help move those systems to create the world that we need to create if we're all going to stay here. And so again, it is that desire. And I know there are a lot of people on this call who are passionate about these topics. And it is that idea of how is it that we can advocate as we change our own individual behavior, and how is it that we can help encourage systemic change for the betterment of everyone. So thank you for everything that you're doing. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And then, Evan, we did get the comment in chat from Heidi that it might be helpful to design the survey so the information can be broken out, like Marilyn is suggesting, by different, demographics, including possibly community, if someone wanted to put in, that information.
We will, I can say we will ask for demographic information, but we probably wouldn't ask for location of the respondent down to anything other more specific than probably the zip code.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that seems reasonable from my experience as well. So thank you.
And I think I saw Valerie raise a hand.
Yes.
Yeah, and Rich and then Valerie. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm a member of the Emergency Preparedness Council for the county, and I'm wondering if you can arrange under the sustainability part of your job to address, we've only had one meeting and our second meeting is coming up shortly. But the best way to prepare for an emergency is to not have it. And so under that, I'm wondering if you could address this, the Emergency Preparedness Council, on ways that we might help you address the sustainability issue of climate change.
Yeah, certainly we would be open to that. We'll be looking to give presentations around the community to different groups about the work. And I have lived over the past 2 years that emerging connection between disasters and climate change, and certainly have a keen interest in, for example, what can be done to prevent wildfires not only through taking, concrete steps, but also doing our part to mitigate climate change. So yes, Richard, I would love to, and maybe we can follow up somehow after this meeting.
Okay, well, I mean, it's all, the staff from the county is working on it. And so I think his name is Daniel Neibauer.
Yes, I work closely with Daniel on a variety of.
Yeah, talk to him about having you come to one of our meetings.
You got it.
Thanks, Rich. Valerie, your turn.
So I have a more mundane question, going back to when you were talking about the services that your department oversees. It seems like sometimes I've lived in Oak Grove long enough that Oak Grove Disposal was the company I dealt with before we got to Waste Management. And it feels like there's a great deal of inflexibility with Waste Management. And wondering if there's anything that can be done for a little more flexibility. And I just want to give an example. In other parts of the, actually in other areas where Waste Management has service in their districts, you can order, like if you need a drop box, there are different sizes that you can order. But in our area, there is one size. You order and pay for a mega box, regardless of the size of project that you might have done. And I have never understood that. So you pay for this very large thing and you're told there's no other options, there's no other sizes. But if you, have lived in places where, you could get a homeowner. I mean, we're more residential. It's not like I need a, gigantic something, but there's no flexibility at all. And I find that really frustrating. Dealing with, Oak Grove Disposal was a very different experience. And I find, and I do know that I had cousins that owned a garbage district. So I understand there's a lot of protection around their service and everything, but I don't feel like we get from Waste Management the service that we got from Oak Grove Disposal. I just really want to say that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. To speak to the example that you gave, I'm sorry to hear what you were told, because what you were told is not accurate. And so that means someone at Waste, we need to talk to somebody at Waste Management to make sure that customers here in our community are being offered the full variety of services that we've directed them to. I live in the Waste Management territory, and I might have myself have ordered one of the smaller drop boxes that it sounds like you were looking for. Just, like a small amount for a home clean out. So they're definitely available. We have a fee structure set for those. So anyone can access that kind of service. So my guess is that you spoke to someone at a customer service desk who was misinformed about the options available in our community, and we can definitely help you with that.
Okay, I just want to, I want to make the point, since I'm doing this, that's happened over time. And it's been a number of, so at least two that I can talk about, and maybe a third time when I've been told the same thing. So it's
okay. Well, I'd like to follow up with you, and I'll just say too, for anyone else on the call, part of our job is to make sure that our franchised collectors are living up to expectations. And so you can always call us when there is something that doesn't meet the expectations that you had for your service. And if necessary, we can step in and ensure that that's resolved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Evan. And we'll make sure to put Evan's contact information in our follow-up email so that you can reach out to him if you have any comments. Commissioner Stavis, did you want to add one more thing before we move on?
Yeah, I just want to expand on what Evan just said. Because they're franchised, we have a contract with them. They have to perform. So again, I just want to emphasize that if anyone has any customer complaints about anything to do with any of the providers out there that are part of the franchise agreement, we have, and they are, and have been, and will be very responsive. And I found that out personally. So we'll be all over it. All you need to do is let us know.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you so much, Evan. We really appreciate you joining us again. And we look forward to perhaps having you back to discuss the climate action plan again in the future as it moves forward. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to share my screen again, go back to our presentation. We're going to talk about the Housing Strategies Phase 2, which we discussed really at length last month. You guys put up with me saying, speaking for a very long time about this, and so I'm not going to go through all of this again, but I did just want to highlight kind of where we are in the process and what we can do to move forward, or what we can do moving forward. So first off, again, the county's proposal, which is generally could be thought of as minimum compliance with House Bill 2001, is to allow middle housing in the urban low density residential areas and identify the development standards for those. There's that remove the 3,000 square foot minimum lot size, simplify the maximum lot coverage requirements in the urban low density residential areas, and we'll talk about that one again in just a minute. Allow and identify standards for middle housing land divisions, which is another state law, Senate Bill 458, that they need to comply with. And then repealing design standards specific to manufactured dwellings, which is another thing they have to do. We don't really have much input on that. So I'm just going to move us forward. This information is here. I'm not going to cover it all again, but we did discuss at length that the county has, the county and the cities, all around the state that have to implement this have very little control over, what aspects of this that they can customize, if you will, for their communities. And so a lot of this is not up for debate, and we don't really need to spend any of our time focusing on it. But I will try to focus our attention on the things that we can have an influence on. And so again, there's a lot of information here. I'm not going to go through it. But it is here if we need to refer back to it. So here are the areas that are going to be impacted in yellow. And then just for prudence, all of those grayer areas, which are the cities, they all have to do the same thing. So, it's not just these yellow areas that have to comply with the bill, it's the yellow and the gray areas. And then just zooming in, so you can see it applies to our residential neighborhoods here in the Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge areas. Let's see, again, this was the 3,000 square foot minimum lot size. This applies to historic lots that were non-conforming, basically for the zone. The maximum lot coverage requirements, the county is proposing to increase those from 40% to 50% in our larger lot size zoning districts, which would allow for even larger single family dwellings to be built, and which seems to be counter to the spirit of what we're trying to do with housing strategies. But again, we'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but this is one that I want to point out that doesn't seem to be consistent with the rest of the recommendations here. And then I just wanted to again point our attention back to some of where the flexibility exists with middle housing, and it's possibly here in how the standards can be applied, particularly when it means possibly saving trees, or these particular diagrams are about preserving trees, and that's, I think, a focus that we don't want to lose sight of. I think that we need to consider that the code is really deficient as presented in terms of tree protections, and that might present an opportunity for us to have request something actionable from the county. So again, there's when you offer flexibility with perhaps where the parking is located on the site, or whether the plexes are attached or detached from each other, you may have the opportunity to protect some trees on the site that you wouldn't otherwise be able to if you require the plexus to be attached with all of the parking on site, like the county is proposing to require. So the other aspect of this is how little middle housing we expect to have constructed over the next 20 years. Chair Smith in the public hearing this morning acknowledged that the best available information, and I think I shared this with you last month, is that we would see a 1% increase in dwellings built over the next 20 years, resulting from the middle housing code. So this is, if you think about how many houses have been built on your street and then add 1% to those, that's what we're really expecting to see over the next 20 years in terms of middle housing development. It just isn't a lot. And in the nearer term, very little of these middle housing options are actually economically viable in Clackamas, the unincorporated Clackamas County area. This really is a long range proposal, really a long range policy that's looking out 30 to 50 years. And in the meantime, there's really not a whole lot of opportunities under the code as proposed by county staff and currently under consideration by the Board of County Commissioners. Really isn't a lot of opportunity for middle housing to have much impact over the next 10 to 20 years on housing affordability, or really the availability of more affordable, lower cost market rate housing. And so just to point this out here on this slide, the only middle housing types shown here that are really economically viable under rents that are achievable in Clackamas County are a fourplex or a double ADU. And right now, the county is not proposing to allow a double ADU, which is easily the most affordable, lower cost housing to deliver, but also is proposing to, limit fourplexes to only the largest lot sizes. And there's many lot sizes in our communities that are smaller than what the county is proposing to allow fourplexes on. And so really there is just not a lot of opportunity at all under the county's proposal for middle housing to be developed in our community. And for any people who might need housing, these options likely are really not going to be available over the next 20 to 30 years, until the next, like I said, about 30 years out. These green and here in green, again, are the places most likely to see middle housing development, because these are the oversized lots in the, in our community. And these are also heavily treed lots. And so, it probably makes sense, if we want to protect our tree canopy, that we should advocate for a middle housing code that allows flexibility when it means that we can save trees on a site, versus the rigidity that is proposed by the county that would not allow anybody flexibility to redesign their proposal to accommodate trees that might be on the site. And then just for reference, this is my high contrast zoning map that I showed you last month. The red is our R10 districts. The green is our R7 districts. And the lavender color is the R8.5. So these are the zoning districts. We actually have lots and lots. We have many lots, many properties in these zoning districts that are undersized, non-conforming. And there's also lots of plexes that are already scattered about through these neighborhoods. And there's already apartments that are built in lots of these neighborhoods. And the middle housing code is really only seeking to allow plexes, row houses, and cottage clusters in these areas. The greenest green near the river, along the river, is the floodplain, and that's going to be limited to duplexes because of the natural hazard designation there. So as you can see, there's the red lots, or the red areas, and again, not even all of the red, are really the best chances that we have for the middle housing development that will actually be economically viable over the next 20 years. And, ultimately it's just a really small, kind of sliver, of, what's available in unincorporated county. So it's really not the most effective code package that they could have put forward. So again, these ones we don't have, 4 and 5, we didn't have any discretion over. So again, I'm just going to go through this really quick. The The analysis here, which the board of directors of the community council asked me to put together after last month's presentation, the restrictive minimum lot size standards in our neighborhoods really severely constrains the number of potential lots available for new residential structures. And we do need additional affordable housing. And we're concerned similarly with the loss of open space and trees and increased traffic, obviously. But what we should probably be advocating for is enhanced on-site open space and tree preservation so that we can, continue to maintain buffering between neighbors. And that can be in the form of incentives, and as well as that minimum site open space requirement, which is the maximum lot coverage requirement that I mentioned. Other things that are recommended for this to be effective are, relaxing standards for middle housing in terms of allowing the 3 and 4 plexes on smaller lot sizes so that they can be more affordable and we can have more opportunities where this can be built. Reducing setbacks or allowing building size flexibility, particularly, when it means the ability to save trees, allowing up to 2 ADUs on each lot, because that's the most affordable housing type that can be produced and is actually very affordable to produce under the current market conditions. And then, allowing for a reduction in parking requirements, where it makes sense. And that could be considering site context, such as the availability of on-street parking, proximity to transit, rather than using a rigid parking mandate that is, uniform everywhere, regardless of context. So what's the county proposing? The county's proposing what I'm calling the baseline minimum compliance option for middle housing. So it's, plexes, townhouses, and cottage clusters. There's no options for a landowner to do anything different to protect healthy, mature trees. All plexes must be attached. 4 plexes or cottage clusters must build sidewalks along their frontage, whether or not there's sidewalks nearby. All parking must be on-site. There is no option for on-street parking to help meet that requirement, particularly, again, if it meant to save a tree. No dice, you got to build the parking on site. The other things the county is proposing is raising the maximum site coverage to 50% on our largest residential lots, which generally is going to mean larger single family houses. You may remember that I showed you a slide last month of a brand new R10 development in, that was in our community and recently annexed to Milwaukee after it was permitted. And those are, $700,000 houses, and they are huge. And that's what R10 gets with a 40% lot coverage. 50% lot coverage, they're going to be even bigger. And there's going to be less of an incentive to provide middle housing, which is the affordable option that this package of code amendments is seeking to actually provide. So that proposal does seem to run counter to the rest of what is being proposed here. Also, there's a really low probability that any naturally affordable middle housing will be built. And again, this is lowercase a affordable. This is just less expensive housing than bigger housing, basically, is what that comes down to. And so triplexes are only permitted on lots over 5,000 square feet. Quadplexes are permitted on lots over 7,000 square feet. And only 1 ADU is allowed per residential lot. This is what the county is proposing today, and this is what they almost adopted today, except that they did continue the hearing and leave the record open for written comments until 4 p.m. on May 9th. And so I would encourage everyone to be enthusiastically write the BCC with your comments about this. But first off, I would like to encourage us to consider these 2 options for sending in our own comments from the Oak Grove Community Council. So here, number 1 is what I'm calling the tree preservation option. And this is where to provide a landowner the option to protect healthy, mature trees, that plexes may be detached, that 4 plexes or cottage clusters may choose to pay the fee in lieu of instead of building sidewalks along their frontage. And that's the fee in lieu of is a pool of funds that allows pedestrian infrastructure to be built in other places where it's needed, instead of along places where it's not really needed. And so obviously that's subjective, but we'll talk, we're getting into a little bit more of that in a second. Parking may be on street, and then also to retain the site coverage at 40% on our largest lot sizes, so that we continue to protect more trees from larger single houses. And then again, even with the tree preservation option, we still retain that low probability that naturally affordable middle housing will be built. This option does not change the lot size minimums for triplexes or quadplexes or the ADU. Now, to push it a little bit further in favor of actually trying to get this code to work and do what it's trying to do, I am presenting the maximum affordability option. And this is the same options as the tree preservation options in terms of the flexibility for a landowner. But what we would do here is to improve the probability that naturally affordable middle housing could be built. We would allow triplexes on lots, on any lot where you could build a single family house or a duplex, allow quadplexes on any lot where you could build a single family house or a duplex or a triplex. And again, if you put a quadplex on a smaller lot, you're going to end up with smaller units and more affordable housing. And just like you would with allowing 2 ADUs on a lot. And that would be also part of the maximum affordability package. And so just really quick analysis here, because I know we're running late on time. So with flexibility for the landowner, when plexes may be detached, it ends up with smaller scale development than attached plexes close to the street, which is what the county is proposing to require right now, is you to have your structure, both of your plexes, both of your dwellings on a duplex, or all 3 on a triplex, all 4 on a quadplex, would have to be right up against that minimum lot setback at 20 feet. And it would all be along the front lot line. There'd be no opportunity to save any trees that might be in the front yard or side yard, just no flexibility whatsoever. When plexes may be detached, they still would have to comply with minimum setbacks. So it still has to maintain any buildings would have to maintain a distance from the side yard or from the back, the rear yard line or the front yard line or the front property line. And they'd still have to comply with maximum site coverage. Just because you're getting to build an additional structure doesn't mean that you get to build more than what maximum site coverage. If right now it's 40% and they're proposing 50%, then you would only be able to cover 40% of the site, even if you put 2 or 3 or 4 structures in a detached plex development. You still have to comply with those standards. It still has to fit within the envelope of the lot where the buildings are allowed to be with a single family house. With the 4-plex or cottage clusters may choose the FILO, the fee in lieu of, instead of building sidewalks along their frontage. That would continue to have exceptions for major streets, arterials, as well as any streets on the essential pedestrian network, which is where we're intending to build a network of sidewalks in the county. And then what I would propose is that ideally this should be tied to the number of lots, not the number of dwellings on the lot. Because right now, under what they're proposing, you could do a 3-lot partition where a triplex is built on each lot. You end up with 9 dwellings, but you can pay into the fee in lieu of for each of those. Or you could do 1 lot with 1 4-plex, no FILO, you have to build the sidewalk, even if you're a half mile away from the nearest section of sidewalk. You'd have to build a sidewalk that would be only along the front of your lot, and there'd be no other sidewalks nearby. And in that case, that's what the fee in lieu of is for, is to take money from those situations where sidewalks don't make sense in that context and pool those resources to where it can be, provide pedestrian infrastructure where it's needed. And so this is a really important one that I wanted to call out, because I think that it's important that, honestly, all middle housing should, be allowed to pay into the FILO. And then when parking can be, unpaved or on the street instead of, again, covering, having to knock down trees or whatever to pave parking, it reduces the cost of providing that housing and may save the opportunities present to save, some more mature trees. getting into the lot sizes, reducing those lot sizes, fewer lots would need to be redeveloped to meet the housing demand versus, with a quadplex versus with duplexes, for instance. It's shown that when you can build more, that some lots will, and that causes the lots around to not, there's that absorbs the demand. It reduces the need for other lots to redevelop to meet demand. And then there's also, when you upzone over a broad area, this is another study that I read recently, there's the lower likelihood of investor speculation on the lots where you can do more. So if you have a very narrow area where you can do more intense development, you'll get a lot of land speculation there where people will buy land to hold on to it, not do anything with it, wait for it to increase in price until someone wants to buy it from them to redevelop it. When you upzone over a broader area, and this is what I'm saying, if we allowed triplexes and quadplexes everywhere we allowed single family houses and duplexes, if we upzone over a broader area, it reduces the impact, the effects of that economic speculation. And there's less likely to be land hoarding that results in this not meeting the intent of the policies that it's trying to implement. And again, for all of these, you still have to comply with the minimum setbacks. You still have to comply with maximum site coverage. You have to comply with the minimum parking. You have to pay systems development charges. All of these things still have to happen for all of the dwellings that are being proposed. And again, this is really all about creating more opportunities for contextually sensitive and creative housing options instead of a uniform design in all of our neighborhoods. And when we're talking about a 1% increase in density versus the existing, baseline, there just isn't that much of a difference. There's not that much of a reason to fight what it's doing. We should really be trying to make it work as well as it possibly can. So that's my recommendation. My recommendation is option 1, that we approve comments to send in support of the maximum affordability package, or the maximum affordability option. Your other options, because I'm not going to fool you, you guys get to tell me what to do. We could send in comments in support of the tree preservation option. We could send in comments in support of the minimum compliance option. I really don't want to do that. I also really don't want to send in any comments objecting to the adoption of this code. I don't want to do nothing. I really do want to send in a letter in support of 1 or 2. That's my pitch. I'm happy to respond to any questions, and I encourage discussion. So I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute so that we can see each other and talk about this really quick. Does anyone have any questions?
Joseph, I noticed some in the chat box.
Oh, okay. So Jenna.
I had a few questions. I think you answered some of them, but if I don't write them down and you hadn't got to me, I'll forget. So I put them in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't want to put words in the mouth of the commissioners who are considering, adopting the code. I'm not sure why the staff proposed to not allow 2 ADUs. I presume they didn't hear a lot of support for it. And so like everything else, they just proposed the minimum compliance route because they have to do something, and what they're proposing is, more preferable to the, county staff than, adopting the state's model middle housing code, which is what will take effect on July 1st if we do nothing. So I think they just didn't hear a lot of support for it. But
Right.
We have good data that shows that that's the most affordable, low-cost housing option to produce, and is certainly affordable under current economics, impact in this county. So it does make sense to advocate for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that does make a lot of sense for new construction, but for existing, like if you say you had a detached garage and you could make a double ADU out of it, but you didn't want to turn your house into a triplex, then that's where like a double ADU would make sense. So you can still retain your home feel, home address.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah,
2 cents.
that would certainly be the intent. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
then,
yeah, for new construction, that makes sense, but not necessarily for existing.
yeah, and my understanding is that when you have an existing structure that you want to convert, that there's generally flexibility with respect to where it's already located. So if you have a structure that's too close to a lot line, but you want to convert it to an ADU, I think that there are ways to get that legalized.
Right.
I do have
a legal ADU on my property, and it's the garage was converted, but I did call the county on this already and asked this question because I'm like, I do have room to put a second, but they're like, well, you'd have to turn your property into a triplex with 3 addresses.
Right.
And I don't know, that feels a bit commercialized to me. I still want it to retain being my property, not 3 addresses. And it's detached, you know what I mean? So there are circumstances, and there's probably a lot of those, I would think, in this county because of the big lots we have, and there's a lot of opportunity for that. But just, I wouldn't want to turn my property into a triplex. It would keep me from where I have opportunity to provide housing that's, alternative and cheaper for someone otherwise.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of flexibility that I am recommending, that what I'm promoting, that and endorsing here, and hoping that we would agree to submit comments in favor of.
Was that in
Rich,
the one, like option 1
up.
or 2 that we're gonna vote on?
I put it in option 2. The maximum affordability package would be to request 2 ADUs.
Okay.
Rich?
Yeah, what I would like to suggest or move that we adopt number 1 with the provision that the elements be considered severally, not as a whole, take it or leave it.
Okay, so that's a motion to break apart my option package?
No, I don't want to break it apart. What I'm saying is I don't want to send them the whole option package of everything and have them say no to everything if they would consider some of it, but not all of it.
Oh, I see. I mean, I would break it out. I would make sure that I sent in a letter where we, detailed the specific things, that we're requesting. And like anything that we send in, it doesn't have to be taken by them as a whole. It can be, they can sever whatever they want from it and, adopt whatever changes they want to adopt. But I would make sure that it was phrased in a way that, we're advocating for, several things, and not just take it or leave it, all or nothing.
Okay, then
I just needed a way to present it that was, kind of breaking it down into.
Well, then I make a motion that we authorize you to write a letter to the BCC with the suggestions that you've come up with. And I'll look for
option 1.
For option 1, and that we look for a second.
I would second that motion.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Now we still have some discussion that we can have. Anissa, did you want to add anything?
Just briefly, yes, I really support, especially the part about not requiring sidewalks, but being able to pay into the fund that would put them where they're needed and where they're appropriate, because some streets, they're not really appropriate at all. And I understand the saving the trees by letting people park on the street. And just logically, I totally get that. Emotionally, I would be really sad if people started parking all along the edge of, in front of their properties on our streets. So a lot of you, I think, live on streets where that isn't happening. And so I'm just sad about that, but I would still support it.
Thank you. Baldwin, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, this is a lot of new information for me, and I need some time to think about that. So is there a tight deadline on this?
Unfortunately, yes, they wanted to, and Commissioner Stavis might be able to speak to this a little bit. They had the hearing this morning. They intended to close the hearing and deliberate and make a decision today. I called in, I requested a continuation, and they graciously approved that continuation. So the record is being left open for written comments through 4 p.m. on May 9th. And then they are reconvening to deliberate for a hearing to deliberate and make a decision on May 11th. And so it is unfortunately very tight. And so what happened, just to recall the timeline here, because of how fast paced this was for everybody, the county put forth their package of code amendments in February, and to announce the planning commission hearing that was in, I think it was on March 28th or 25th or something like that. And so the tail end of March. And so we got that, we processed it. I tried to give a preview of it at our February meeting, but it was like so close that I didn't really have everything ready. I couldn't turn around that fast for our February meeting. So then in our March meeting, I talked to you guys for over an hour about, what they proposed. And then the hearing before the Board of County Commissioners was actually today, this morning. And so, this is kind of, this is our very next meeting after sharing all that information with you guys last month. This was our next meeting. We may not even have had this chance, except that the board did graciously approve a continuation. So I'm obviously challenged by the fact that this is a short timeline and that I am asking a lot, of you, to, trust the recommendation that I'm making here. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate what I'm asking of you and where this puts us. I hope that, everyone will feel comfortable perhaps sending in their own comments to the BCC as well in advance of that May 9th deadline at 4 p.m. But certainly this is kind of our only chance to make a recommendation as the community council. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, I just want to make a general comment. I appreciate a few of you who watched that meeting this morning. In general, on land use stuff, the opportunity to really shape things is with staff or during the planning commission time. There's not really much willingness by some of the members of the current BCC to tweak or think through or deliberate in any detail. And it was I won't say a Herculean effort this morning, but I almost thought for sure this is going to be a slam dunk, one and done meeting, and the meeting would be over and we wouldn't even be talking about this today. But it is not easy to get more thought and thoughtful discussion at the BCC level. But we did manage to get that across the finish line today, to extend the written comment period, not the public comment period as far as public speaking at the second hearing. So I encourage you to take action tonight, because if you don't, that the ship will sail, essentially.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I can read back the
So
motion.
we have a motion on the floor. Yeah, we have a motion on the floor to approve comments for the option 1, which was the maximum affordability package that I described. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I'm sorry, who's
Okay, then we will take.
who seconded? Was Jane?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And we'll take a roll call vote, and I'll ask Danielle to read the voting members in attendance, please, and vote yay or nay, please.
Okay,
Sorry, can you read what was the vote? What was being voted, please? Again, I didn't hear.
Yeah, here's how I have it
I'll
captured.
share it on the screen.
Oh, you have one?
Option 1.
Yeah, so the OGCC will send, a board will send a letter to the BCC in support of option 1, which is the maximum affordability option. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take roll. It seems like a few people have dropped off, so I'll read through. If you don't see their name on the side, just let me know. If they don't see their name still on the attendance list. Okay. Anata
Yes.
or Anata, sorry. I'm so sorry. Here we go.
Oh, did you hear me?
I did. I'm sorry. I have to get out the non-voting members. Valerie?
Yes.
Jane?
Yes.
Sue Conachan?
Yes.
Dave Doback?
No.
Joseph Edge will abstain. Mark Elliott?
Yes.
Thelma Hagen-Miller?
Yes.
Tom Hogan? I don't see Tom.
Yes.
Oh, there you are. Pam Horan?
Yes.
Eleanor Hunter? I believe she dropped. Susan Keel also dropped. Danielle Lohman, I will vote yes. Grian Miller?
Yes.
Paul Savis?
Have to abstain.
Jenna Smith?
This is for what's on the screen here right now.
Yep.
Yes.
Baldwin?
Abstained. Not enough time to think about it.
Okay. Craig Van Valkenburg?
Yes.
And Suzanne Wolf? Suzanne?
Can you hear me now, Danielle?
I can.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Did I miss anyone who is a voting member?
I think you missed me, but I made the motion.
Rich, how does this keep happening? I missed you last time too. Sorry.
I voted.
All right.
yes.
Anyone else? Okay, I've got you now, Rich. I somehow just didn't mark you as present. Okay. And I can give you.
Okay, so we get everyone.
15 or 14 yes, 1 no, and 2 abstain.
I think there were 3 abstentions because Baldwin, Commissioner Savas,
Sorry.
and I all abstained.
3, you're right.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make sure we're.
Yeah, I don't usually record you as an abstain.
Okay.
Yep. Right.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, thank you. I usually don't record me either. So. Thank you. Okay, so here's the information about the hearing. The hearing is not the time to testify. The time to testify is in writing by email to infritzy@clackamas.us. Also, you could send it to bccmail@clackamas.us. You can watch the hearing on May 11th, but get your written comments in by 4 p.m. on Monday, May 9th. And because they will be meeting on May 11th only to deliberate and make a decision. The record will be closed at 4 p.m. on May 9th. So that's our final opportunity. So thank you everybody for approving, sending comments in. I really, really super appreciate it. So now we're gonna head into our committee updates. And so Rich, you've got a couple first. How about the CERT update?
Okay, CERT update. Old CERT will be involved in the Trolley Trail Festival this summer. We're planning to offer quarterly first aid and CPR AED trainings. The first aid will be July 30th. It's open to the public and it will cost $25. And the following month will be a public CPR class. We are continuing to work on getting our GMRS repeater up and running. And if you are interested in ULCERT, if you do a Google search on ULCERT, you'll find our website and you can sign up for newsletters or you can come to meetings, which at this point are still Zoom meetings.
Thanks, Rich. And then do you have a quick update from the CPO Summit?
On the CPO Summit, basically we met and we were making arrangements for CPOs that are near inactive CPOs. CPO stands for Community Planning Organizations, and we are charged officially by the government with having the ability to make comments and to make a forget what the word is, to make filings without having to pay a fee. A lot of the CPOs have become inactive over time, especially with Zoom, because a lot of Clackamas County is rural and Zoom doesn't work real well there. And so the county is arranging to have inactive CPOs represented by active CPOs, and will send the planning matters that come before them. They'll notify the active CPOs. That was a lot of the discussion. It doesn't really affect Oak Grove a great deal because we are the most active of CPOs in the county. And I don't expect that because we're surrounded by cities that we will be the area that gets any notices from other CPOs, but it could happen. We also identified forest fires and zoning enforcement as the primary issues that the CPOs want to address with the county. That's it for CPO Summit.
Cool, thanks, Rich. Danielle, did you have a community road fund update?
I do not.
Oh, okay. For some reason I had it highlighted that you did.
Yeah, I thought I would, but
no
I
worries.
didn't have anything. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Valerie, the Economic Development Commission.
Yeah, a quick update. We had this morning, there was a presentation from the Small Business Development Center focusing on farms, ranchers, and the growing programs. And it was very interesting look at our Clackamas County to say, you know, for example, that there's a goal, let's put it that way, from the county and from the commissioners to increase food production and the amount of acreage that's actually producing food in Clackamas County. Part of that is about sustainability as a county and thinking about long-term, if there was supply disruptions, like we've seen, and to make sure that the ground is actually producing food. So some little things that I found pretty interesting. I'm hoping some of you will find it interesting anyway. There is 4,297 farms in Clackamas County, 4,297. Of those, 13% of those farms actually sell enough to provide a living wage for the owners of those farms. And 67% of the farmers are of retirement age or older, and another 12 to 15% of the farmers are within a few years of retirement. So there's a lot of discussion about transition of farmland and how the system is set up to actually, what happens is we decrease the number of farms, we decrease the amount of production even while the number of farms is going up because the land keeps getting divided further. So 86% of those farms are less than 10 acres. 98% of them are family farms, and only 1% are organic farms. So there's a lot of work to be done. If we were to look at products that are grown on our farms, the number one crop actually in Clackamas County and across the nation, Clackamas County has number one of Christmas trees, which, by the way, are not edible, but that is our number one product. And the second largest in the state for Clackamas County, what we produce are eggs and horses. And horses, by the way, are not an edible product. So there's a lot of work being done to encourage ways to keep land in production. So some of this work needs to be done at a policy level. So just to help us understand that a little bit. So for example, if the farmer is retiring, dies, wants to pass that property on, and there's no one that wants to take over farming, the cost of the inheritance tax, for the most part, for larger pieces of land, the land needs to be sold in order to pay the inheritance tax. So we don't have policies in place that help us to keep farmland. We also have incentives. So for some of these small farms, what happens is that we have people that take advantage of tax benefits for having a farm. So they buy a big piece of property, they put a big house on it, and they have just enough chickens or berries that are growing to allow them to be within that loop that keeps the incentive for being a farm, but they're not really a farm. And much of the land is going fallow. So it's a pretty interesting conversation. So I just thought that some of that might be interesting to some of you. We think about Clackamas County as having so many farms, and the number of them is increasing again, that the size is going down and our farmers are aging out of the business with no one ready to take over. So they're doing some work at Clackamas Community College has a program where they're actually, bring farmers in and talk about how to transition, how to connect them with interns that are interested in farming, how to help them move into organic farming, and what is, how to continue to make a profit, or to at least begin to make a profit. There's what they call agritourism. And that's where a farmer has something like, I guess the easiest thing to think about is like a pumpkin patch. So they have a pumpkin patch and they make money from people coming to the farm for other reasons. And that money helps supplement keeping the farm going. But I think most of us are interested in eating, in continuing to eat good food, but just a recognition of how difficult it is for farmers to continue to farm and in our county. So anyway, it was an interesting meeting.
Well, thank you for that update. Let's see, Suzanne, did you have an HDOG update this month?
Thanks, Joseph, for asking, but I do not have a report for this evening.
Okay, thank you. Then next up is Mark with the Trolley Trail Fest Committee.
Thanks, Joseph. I think I just wanted to acknowledge a few of our recent sponsors to the program for the Trolley Trail. Most recently, Clackamas Credit Union made a very generous donation to the Trolley Trail. And some of our most recent sign-ups for booths include North Clackamas Watershed Council, the Native Plant Society of Oregon, the Clackamas County Parks Department, North Clackamas Parks and Recreation Department, and Friends of the Trolley Trail. So we are continuing to have more vendors sign up. It's been a little bit slow on getting them to sign up. And pretty soon, Suzanne and myself and some other folks will be reaching out to people to get volunteers to help us during the Trolley Trail Fest itself, where we're going to need about 30 volunteers total for the day. And so we'll be hearing more about that here in the next month or so. So again, the trolley trail is taking place, the fest is taking place on Saturday, July 16th. So be sure to put that on your calendars. You'll see a lot of flyers and other information going up here, probably late May, early June. That's my report. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark. Let's see. Anita, do you have a NCPRD update?
I do. It's an important one, actually. So I think I'll read it just so I don't forget to put something in. So this is basically an announcement of something that's on the horizon. And as far as our Parks District goes, the most important thing on the horizon is the relationship between our community and NCPRD. And the question is whether we're just going to be at the receiving end of county ideas and decisions about Parks and Rec, or whether residents are going to be in the driver's seat about how our tax money is spent and our parks priorities are set. The first big step happened in 2020 when the District Advisory Committee bylaws were revised, giving the unincorporated areas twice as many parks representatives as we used to have. What has to happen now is the second big step, getting parks forums or boards similar to what they have in Milwaukee, established in each of the 4 unincorporated subareas of NCPRD. And towards that end, there's a pair of town hall meetings coming up on May 18th and June 15th by Zoom at 7 p.m. The meeting in May will fill you in on community representation and encourage people to run for 4 DAC vacancies. Most of Oak Grove is in Subarea 2, which has no vacancies on the DAC, but part of Oak Grove is with Jennings Lodge in Subarea 1. And in that subarea, there is a vacancy for someone to start on July 1st. So if you want to be on the DAC, you can find out if your address is in Subarea 1 by going to a web page, which I'll put the link for it in the chat. And there's, I will also put a link in the chat for how to apply to be on the DAC, because the application period should open soon. I can't tell you exactly how soon, but soon. And it will close on June 8th. I will put both those things in the chat. And the second meeting, this is a pair of meetings. The second meeting will have 2 purposes that apply to us. One is to vote for a DA representative if you live in Subarea 1. And the other is to meet people who want to create forums in the subareas. These would be your friends and neighbors, and have a greater role than we used to have in NCPRD decisions by having these forums. So let's team up on these 2 meetings and join together in parks forums, making parks forums. And within those forums, we'll help communication between NCPRD and all of us residents, and we'll contribute to the work on a new systems plan and set Parks and Rec priorities that truly match what we want for our area. Any questions? Okay, I'll just put those 2 links in the chat then.
Yeah, can you
Perfect.
just tell me when the meetings are again, what time?
They're 7 p.m. by Zoom on May 18 and June 15.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Anita.
Thank you.
And then let's see. So we already had Susan's update at the beginning. And so Thelma, did you want to make a quick announcement about the Friends of the Trolley Trail meeting?
Yeah, the Friends of the Trolley Trail meeting is tomorrow night, 6:30. It's by Zoom, and I've put in the chat box Sarah McClurg, who is our deputy sheriff who sets the meeting and runs the Zoom part. I put her email in and my email in. So if anybody wants to come to the meeting, they can send us an email. We'll send them the link to the Zoom meeting. I don't have it in front of me, so I couldn't put it into the chat, but the rest of it's in the chat, my email and Sarah's email. And we will be discussing the booth that we're going to have, and the we're going to try to set up a bicycle area that's secure at the Trolley Trail Festival. So people that come by bike can get off and walk around and know that their bike is going to be secure. We did that a couple of years ago and it worked very well. So those are the kinds of things we're going to be discussing.
Awesome, thank you. And let's see. Okay, I'll share my screen really quick. I know we're almost at the end of our time, but here are the current recruitments for the different advisory boards and committees at the county. The ones in bold are closing soon. And so if you want to apply for any of these, then here's that web address. It's, that's web3.clackamas.us/abc. And we'll include these in our follow-up email as well. And let's see, any other announcements from the floor? Okay, well, our next meeting is going to be May 25th, and our next board meeting will be June 6th. So that's it for tonight, everybody. Valerie, could you stop recording?